10:43, three-man front. We inch closer to the start of the college football season. One scrimmage in the books in Tuscaloosa, also on the plains of Auburn, and a gentleman who has his finger on the pulse of everything going on down at Auburn is our friend Jason Caldwell, AuburnUndercover.com. He joins us now on the Higginbotham Hotline. Jason, how are you this Monday?
I'm good, guys. How about y'all?
We're doing great. Let's start back with the news that came out on the recruiting front last Friday. Auburn needed a big-time commitment, at least from the optics of it, for Hugh Freeze maybe anyways, and they got one. You get the number 2 wide receiver in the country, Jace Matthews, a kid from just over in the state of Mississippi. Tell us about Jace Matthews for our listeners who don't know.
Yeah, athletic guy. I really – the thing that probably jumps out to me more than anything is just his ability to catch the football in traffic. Like, he's a guy that can go up and make plays and strong hands. And so, look at him. He's athletic. He can run. He can do all that stuff. But it feels like he's kind of a true receiver. And so, you look at this roster and the potential of it at wide receiver now. Eric Singleton is a junior, but could be a draft guy. Horatio Fields is a senior. Everybody else has eligibility remaining. So this should be another deep group of wide receivers next year. And he's a guy that you feel like has a chance to come into play early.
All right, Jason, let's talk about what took place on Friday morning. All indications from y'all's reporting at Auburn Undercover that the defense had a very, very good day. Keldrick Falk and the rest of the guys, it looks like that they had a really good day. What can you tell us about the Friday scrimmage?
Yeah, just from getting some stuff from inside and talking to people, I think the defense continues to perform really well. And I don't think it's necessarily that the offense isn't playing great. I just think the defense right now is ahead of where they are. And that's, like I said, from doing this for a long time, talking to coaches, that's where they usually are at the beginning. The defense should be ahead of that offense. And that kind of get worrisome if it's not. But, now you start to kind of maybe start to fine-tune the offense a little bit moving forward. And so I think you look at them going, okay, now you start to maybe focus in on what you want to do with certain players. Right now you're just kind of running stuff. And so you're installing and running it, and that defense gets a chance to see it a pretty good bit. So I think now you start to figure out, okay, how do we want to do things with this guy? What package is best for this group? All those things. You start to kind of focus on some of those things moving forward. But defensively, it's been, probably maybe the biggest surprise for me so far. My biggest question was on this team was going to be interior defensive line and linebacker. So far, those guys have played pretty well. And so, to me, that's a pretty good sign for this team that those guys, from an athletic standpoint, I thought they had enough of that. Just wondered if they would be able to hold up. And it's early, and you haven't played 7 or 8 games in a row and all those things, but so far that group's looked pretty good.
Jackson Arnold, we're getting reports from you guys and people who were texting on Thursday before the scrimmage that Jackson Arnold might have been having his best day. What are you hearing? What have you been able to observe from the Auburn quarterback?
Yeah, I think he's done a good job of just not pressing the issue. I think that's been the key. Something I talked about with this team is I feel like for the first time in a long time, this is an Auburn team that you don't feel like you have to play perfect to win against a good team. And I think that's been the case the last few years. You felt like we got to play perfect and you got to press the issue and you got to go make plays. I think he's a guy that Hugh Freeze has mentioned it, said, look, just make the plays that's there to be made. And I think it kind of reminds me of watching Scotty Scheffler play golf, where you go, like, he doesn't have to be spectacular. Just don't make the big mistake. And that's what he doesn't do. That's the thing. I think you looked last year and you went, man, you had the big turnover game against Cal. You had more against Arkansas. You had the killer turnover late against Oklahoma. And you look and go, other than that, those things were huge. The rest of the season played pretty good, but because of those things, it wasn't enough to overcome. And so this team feels like you got a chance to overcome some mistakes, just not the catastrophic one. And I think Jackson Arnold's done a good job of just, hey, keep it between the lines and get the ball in the hands of your playmakers.
Jason, I know it sounds like it's been a very good camp, the first 10 practices of the 20 for the fall. But if you could just point out maybe one on the offensive side and one on the defensive side that maybe has just really kind of come out of nowhere, kind of the surprise guy that all of a sudden you're hearing a lot on the offensive side and the defensive side that maybe you were not anticipating before fall camp started?
Yeah, there's a bunch on defense. That's the thing. So you play more guys on that side of the ball anyway. So you normally hear more names over there. I'll give a couple of guys on defense. Morris Williams is one, freshman last year. That was a 5-star guy, and you go, man, when does the light bulb come on? And feels like he's done some of that for a guy like a Morris Williams. The other one is Xavier Atkins, the LSU linebacker transfer. I think he's had a really good camp. He's a guy that's really decisive and downhill. So those are a couple of guys on defense. Offensively, it's probably been Omar Mapson, true freshman running back from here in Auburn High School that was actually an early high school graduate. So he should still be a senior in high school. Graduated early, got to Auburn this summer, 5'9", 213. So he's a rock back there, big kid, physical, can run. So probably been the bigger surprise on offense has been the true freshman running back, getting some work and turning some heads.
Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers, Auburn Undercover, joining us here on Three Man Front, joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. I know it's a touchy subject, but we have to address it. Saw the reports that Malcolm Simmons, talented Auburn wide receiver, his legal team had planned to file for a help me out here.
Youthful offender
status. What can you tell us? I know it's foolish to try to speculate on a situation like this, especially with legal proceedings set to take place. But what does your gut and people you talk to, just kind of observing the situation, tell you about maybe the likelihood that we see him this season?
Yeah, I think from folks I've talked to, and I actually had a chance to speak to his lawyer, and just kind of some background stuff when I wrote the story originally. And then I think they feel like that he'll play football again. I think they feel like this is one of those things where I think youthful offender was basically to go, look, this is involving a small child is involved with him and his and the girlfriend, and so I think they just said, look, we want this to be out of the public eye as much as possible, and so that was really the reason for youthful offender. I think they still feel like that things will go their way when the dust settles on this one. We'll see. I think it's going to come down to, okay, does the DA feel like they have do they feel they have enough to present it and go forward and moving forward with a trial, all those things. I think that's kind of the next step in this one, but should hear something maybe today on whether that will be granted and then what it looks like moving forward. And so I think that's the next step in this one.
Jason, when we talked to you in Atlanta, we pointed out the first 5 games on the Auburn schedule, how crucial that is. Just like it was last year, it kind of set the tone for the rest of the season, or at least the second half of the season. Has your line of thinking changed at all, especially after hearing the positive reviews at the stuff that's going on in fall camp right now? Is those 5 games is still a pinnacle part of what Auburn could potentially be this year?
Yeah, I think it's still, that kind of sets the tone. No matter who you're playing, really, you want to get off to a good start, and so I thought that was one of the biggest hindrances last year. Is he had all those home games and you dropped a couple of them, and that was a big deal, knowing what was still to come on the road. This year, you go on the road, and if you can grab a couple of those, then you got more home games in that second half, so you feel like, okay, that sets you up for success. And one of the things I've talked about, I did one of my 2-minute videos on recently, was that the thing I have to remember, and I have to do it even though I think about it all the time, but I think fans have to remember too, is that college football now is, and it's not quite NFL, but is more NFL-like in that we used to think about it and you go, well, you lose to Baylor, the season's over with. That's in our mindset, that's the way college football's always been. If you lost a game, that was it. Well, that's not the case anymore. You look in the SEC now and you go, man, if you're a 9-3 team in this league, you got a great shot to be in the playoffs. 10-2, you're in for sure. So you start thinking about going, like, you can lose 2 games playing in the Southeastern Conference and still be okay. And so I think from that perspective, I think it's important to realize that, man, if you play well at Baylor and lose, the season's not over with. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois last week in week 2 and played for a national championship. So I think, yeah, they're all important, but I do think setting the tone early with that 5-game stretch is going to be a big deal.
Jason, being around this program as long as you have, and when you can kind of read coaches just from talking to them, not necessarily what they say, but how they carry themselves. In the first 2 seasons, based on what you observed from Hugh Freeze and his staff, then to what you have seen so far this season here in the offseason leading up until the first game, have you been able to sense a difference in their demeanors and maybe sensing some of that confidence that's coming through?
I think it's part of what I mentioned earlier. I do think you can feel it feels different when you feel like you don't have to be perfect. And that's a hard thing to do. It's hard to go into a game going, well, we got to be perfect to have a chance. And you felt like that probably 4 times, maybe more than that 2 years ago. But last year, you go to Georgia and Alabama, and you go, got to be perfect. Not necessarily Texas A&M, but you start thinking about some of these other games and go, we can't afford too many mistakes if you want to win that game. And so I think all of a sudden you feel like, man, you can go into games now and you can overcome a mistake and win. And so I think that in itself gives you more confidence when you look out there and you go, we're more talented than we've been since we've been here. So I think that in itself gives you a different feeling going into a season.
Always great stuff. Jason Caldwell covers the Auburn Tigers, does a masterful job in doing so. AuburnUndercover.com, part of the 247 Sports Network, at ITAT Jason there on X. Jason, always appreciate your time, and we know you're busy this time of year, but you're so informative. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Jason
Caldwell joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. You deserve solutions that are built for you. Higginbotham's your one-source solution for insurance, financial, and HR services.
Since 1936, the Associated Press, they have released a preseason top 25 poll. We're about to see in about 5 minutes where they have the Alabama Crimson Tide or the Auburn Tigers. If they were good enough to be in the top 25, we anticipate Alabama most certainly will, but will Auburn crack the top 25 according to the AP preseason poll? All that is straight ahead. 12 o'clock hour, Nick Kelly from AL.com. Thanks for tuning us in. It's Reaction Monday on Jocks.